You're taking children from more deserving parents. My sister exploded when she found out I was pregnant after fostering 2 kids. When I defended myself, my mom kicked me out. I, 29F, never expected my family would fall apart over me trying to help children in need. It all started 7 years ago, but I need to explain the full situation for everyone to understand what happened last week. When I was 22 and fresh out of college, I signed up with a local community center to be a mentor for at-risk youth. I was paired with Zoe, a 10-year-old girl whose mother Amanda, 34F, was struggling to keep a steady job while dealing with some personal issues. Zoe was bright but falling behind in school due to her unstable home life. We met twice a week for tutoring and activities. After 6 months of mentoring, Amanda called me late one night. She sounded exhausted and desperate. Her landlord had evicted them, and she couldn't find affordable housing. Amanda asked if Zoe could stay with me just for a couple of weeks until she got back on her feet. I lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment and had the space, so I agreed. 2 weeks turned into a month, then 3 months. Amanda visited when she could, but finding steady work and housing proved more difficult than she expected. The mentoring program coordinator suggested I become an official foster parent to make the arrangement legal and get support services for Zoe. I went through the training and home studies, and 6 months after Zoe moved in, I became her foster parent. Amanda continued to work on getting stable. We maintained a good relationship throughout this time. She visited Zoe regularly and called her almost every day. I never tried to replace Amanda. I made sure Zoe understood that her mom loved her and was working hard to bring her home. 5 years ago, when Zoe was 12 and I was 24, Amanda and I had a long talk. She had found steady work but her housing situation remained precarious, and she was concerned about pulling Zoe from the school where she had finally started to thrive. Together, we decided it would be best for Zoe if I became her legal guardian. This wasn't an easy decision for Amanda. I watched her sign the paperwork with tears streaming down her face. She did it because she believed it was best for her daughter. Life settled into a new normal. Zoe thrived in school, joined the debate team, and made friends. Amanda remained involved in her life, spending weekends with her when possible and calling regularly. I made sure they maintained their bond. Then, 2 years ago, Amanda contacted me again. She had given birth to a son, Ethan, but was struggling to care for him while working full-time. She asked if I would consider fostering him too, so the siblings could be together. After thinking it over, I agreed and brought 2-year-old Ethan into my home. I moved us to a 3-bedroom house with a yard, using money I had saved from my job as an accountant. Last year, I met Kevin, 31M, through work. We dated for several months before things ended mutually when he got a job offer in another state. What I didn't know when we broke up was that I was pregnant. I'm now 25 weeks along with my first biological child. My older sister, Megan, 35F, has been trying to have a baby with her husband for 9 years without success. They've gone through multiple rounds of fertility treatments, and each failure has been devastating for them. Megan always talked about becoming a mother. It was her dream since we were kids. When Zoe first came to live with me, Megan was supportive. She brought over clothes and toys, and sometimes took Zoe for weekend activities to give me a break. She was also welcoming when Ethan joined our family. But I noticed her visits became less frequent over time. She made excuses about being busy with work, but I suspected the children reminded her of what she couldn't have. 3 weeks ago, I called my family to share the news about my pregnancy. My parents were excited about their new grandchild. Megan's response was a flat congratulations before she changed the subject. After that call, Megan stopped responding to my texts and calls entirely. Last week, my mother invited the whole family for Sunday dinner. I arranged for a friend to watch Zoe and Ethan and went alone. Throughout the meal, my parents asked questions about the pregnancy. Was I feeling okay? Had I thought of names? Was the nursery ready? Each time the baby was mentioned, Megan would look at me with cold eyes before looking away. As we were finishing dessert, Megan asked why I even took in 2 foster children if I could clearly have real children of my own. The table went silent. I explained the circumstances, how Amanda had reached out for help, how I became a foster parent to provide stability for Zoe, how we later decided legal guardianship was best for her, and how Ethan came to live with me to keep the siblings together. Megan's face hardened with each word I spoke. She said it felt like I was flaunting my instant family in her face when she had been trying for years. She said it wasn't fair that I had 2 children fall into my lap when I wasn't even trying to be a mother, and now I was carelessly having a biological child too. The worst part came when she said it was cruel that I took 2 children from the foster system that could have gone to parents who deserved them more since they couldn't have their own kids. Her words hit me like a physical blow. I told her that while I understood her pain, my foster children weren't some prize to be given to the most deserving couple. They were children who needed a safe home, and their biological mother had specifically asked for my help. I told her that I was sorry for her struggles, but her infertility wasn't my responsibility, and I wouldn't apologize for providing a home for children in need. My mother, who had been quietly watching this exchange, asked me to leave. I gathered my things and walked out without another word. The next day, my mother called. She said I had been unnecessarily cruel to Megan, especially knowing what she'd been going through. She said I should apologize for hurting my sister's feelings. I sent Megan a text apologizing for the harshness of my words, but not for the content. I explained that I respected her journey and her pain, but I wouldn't accept blame for her struggles or let her characterize my relationship with Zoe and Ethan as taking children away from more deserving parents. Megan never responded to my text. My mother called again to say I was making things worse by doubling down instead of offering a genuine apology. Now I'm sitting in my kitchen, watching Zoe help Ethan build a tower with blocks, wondering if I handled this all wrong. Zoe keeps asking when we'll visit Grandma and Grandpa again, and I don't know what to tell her. I've always tried to do what's best for these children, but now I wonder if my family will ever accept our unconventional journey to becoming a family. Did I push too hard? Should I have been more sensitive to Megan's feelings? Or am I right to stand my ground on this issue? Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since the dinner disaster, and things have only gotten more complicated with my family. First, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Your support helped me realize I wasn't wrong to defend my children and our family structure. Many of you shared similar experiences with relatives who viewed foster care through a selfish lens, and that helped me feel less alone. After sending that text to Megan and getting no response, I discovered she had blocked my number and removed me from all her social media accounts. I wasn't surprised, but it still stung. Last week was my 28-week anatomy scan, and my mother had previously agreed to come with me. 2 days before the appointment, she called to cancel. She explained that Megan was still too upset to even hear my name and my mother didn't want to make things worse by supporting me at the scan. She suggested I reschedule for when things calmed down. I didn't reschedule. Instead, I took Ethan with me to the appointment. The nurses at the clinic adored him, and he sat quietly looking at picture books while the technician performed the ultrasound. Watching him point excitedly at the screen when the baby moved made the absence of my mother and sister fade into the background. After the appointment, my mother texted asking how it went and whether I found out the baby's sex. I saw the message but didn't respond. What was there to say? That the clinic allowed a toddler to attend in her place? That a stranger showed more interest in my pregnancy than my own family? 4 days ago, my father called. He rarely gets involved in family disputes, preferring to stay neutral, so his call surprised me. He said my mother had told him about skipping the anatomy scan, and he wanted to check on me. He listened as I explained everything that had happened since the dinner, occasionally asking questions but mostly just letting me talk. When I finished, he said something unexpected. He thought Megan and my mother were wrong. He said providing a home for children who needed one was never something to apologize for, and while he understood Megan's pain, she had no right to make me feel guilty for my choices or my pregnancy. Then he offered to come stay with me after the baby is born, bringing his new wife Susan to help. They lived 3 hours away, and he suggested they could come for the first 2 weeks to help with Zoe and Ethan while I recovered. This was especially meaningful because my mother had originally volunteered for this role, and her withdrawal left me scrambling for postpartum support. Yesterday, I received a message from Megan's husband, Tom. He said Megan had been inconsolable since our argument and had started seeing a therapist. He wasn't asking me to apologize. In fact, he admitted that Megan's words at dinner were out of line. He simply wanted me to know she was getting help, and he hoped someday we could repair our relationship. I responded, thanking him for reaching out and saying I was glad Megan was getting support. I explained that while the door remained open for reconciliation, it would need to include respect for my children, all 3 of them, and recognition that Zoe and Ethan are not consolation prizes for infertile couples but children who deserve safety and stability. After sending that message, I sat down with Zoe to explain, in age-appropriate terms, what was happening with her aunt and grandmother. I told her that sometimes adults disagree and need time apart to sort through their feelings. I assured her it had nothing to do with her or Ethan, and that our family, including the new baby, was my priority. Zoe asked thoughtful questions about why her aunt was upset about the baby. I explained that sometimes when people want something very badly and can't have it, seeing others get it easily can make them sad or angry. She nodded and said she understood because she felt that way when her friend got the exact sneakers she wanted for her birthday, but her mom, Amanda, couldn't afford them. The wisdom of a 14-year-old sometimes amazes me. This morning, I texted my father accepting his offer of postpartum help. I then called Amanda to update her on the situation. She visits monthly now and calls Zoe twice a week. She's doing well. She recently got a promotion at work and has been stable in her apartment for over a year. She expressed concern about the family conflict and offered her own support, suggesting she could take both kids for a weekend before the baby comes to give me time to prepare. I'm still processing my feelings about my mother's actions. Her choice to prioritize Megan's comfort over attending an important milestone in my pregnancy reveals where her loyalties lie. For now, I've decided to limit contact with her, focusing instead on the people who have shown up for me and my children. As for the baby news, it's a boy. The scan showed he's measuring right on track, with all tests coming back normal. Zoe is delighted to be getting another brother. She's already selected a stuffed elephant, the first toy I gave her when she came to live with me, to pass down to him. Ethan doesn't quite grasp what's happening but pats my belly and says baby with a smile. I still haven't decided on a name for this little one. With everything going on, that task keeps slipping down my priority list. I have about 12 weeks to figure it out, so suggestions are welcome. Thank you again for your support. It means more than you know. Update 2. It's been 3 months since my last update, and the baby is now 3 weeks old. So much has happened, and I've been wanting to post an update, but newborn life makes everything else take a back seat. First, the birth. Alexander James, we're calling him Alex, arrived 2 weeks early, weighing 7 pounds 2 ounces. Labor was straightforward but exhausting, 14 hours from start to finish. My father and Susan arrived the day before I went into labor, almost as if they sensed the timing. They took charge of Zoe and Ethan while I was in the hospital, bringing them to visit once Alex and I were settled. Zoe's reaction to her new brother was everything I could have hoped for. She held him with careful hands, her face a mixture of awe and pride. Ethan was more interested in the hospital bed controls than the baby, but he did pat Alex's head and declare him tiny, which I'm counting as a win. Amanda visited us in the hospital too, bringing handmade blankets for the baby. She sat with me while Zoe showed her the baby, and later told me how proud she was of the young woman Zoe is becoming. These moments of connection across our unconventional family bonds mean the world to me. Now, the situation with my sister and mother. My mother texted when she heard I was in labor, asking which hospital I was at. I didn't respond until after Alex was born, sending only a brief message with his birth stats and a single photo. She replied asking when she could visit. After discussing it with my father, I told her I wasn't ready for visitors beyond immediate support people. This led to a barrage of texts about my cruelty in keeping her from her grandson. She claimed I was punishing her for siding with Megan and that family should come together when a new baby arrives. My father stepped in and told her to back off, saying I needed space and time to recover without additional stress. A week after coming home from the hospital, a large package arrived addressed to Alex. Inside was an expensive bassinet and several newborn outfits. The card was signed from Megan and Tom. No note, no message, just their names. I called Tom to thank them for the gifts. He sounded surprised to hear from me and said the bassinet had been Megan's idea. When I asked if she wanted to speak with me, he hesitated before saying she wasn't ready yet. I told him I appreciated the gesture and that the door remained open when she was ready to talk. 2 days later, my mother showed up unannounced at my house. I was alone with the baby, Zoe was at school, Ethan was at his playgroup, and my father and Susan had gone grocery shopping. She rang the doorbell repeatedly, waking Alex who had just fallen asleep after a feeding. When I opened the door, she pushed past me into the house, heading straight for the living room where the bassinet was set up. She picked up Alex before I could stop her, cooing about finally meeting her grandson. I stood frozen, torn between not wanting to create a scene that might upset the baby and the violation I felt at her intrusion. I asked her to sit down and carefully explained that while I was glad she wanted to meet Alex, showing up unannounced was not acceptable. I told her I needed her to respect my boundaries if she wanted to be part of our lives. She responded that she wouldn't need to resort to such measures if I hadn't been keeping the baby from the family. When my father and Susan returned, my mother's demeanor changed immediately. She handed the baby to me and acted as though her visit had been planned all along. My father, seeing my face, asked my mother to leave. She left in tears, calling back that I was turning everyone against her. The next day, I received a long email from Megan. She said her therapist had encouraged her to write down her feelings but had advised her not to send the message. She decided to send it anyway. The email alternated between apology and accusation, acknowledging her words at dinner were hurtful, but also reiterating that my ease at building a family felt like a personal attack on her struggle. The final paragraph revealed she and Tom had been approved as foster parents and were expecting their first placement next month. She wrote that her therapist had helped her see that her anger toward me was misplaced, and that working within the foster system herself might help her heal. She closed by saying she wasn't ready to see me or the baby yet, but hoped someday we could rebuild our relationship. I responded congratulating her on the foster parent approval and wishing her well with her first placement. I shared some insights from my early fostering days that might help her, and told her I was open to talking when she felt ready. I haven't heard back. My father and Susan stayed for 3 weeks instead of the plan 2. Their help was invaluable. They kept the household running smoothly, made sure Zoe and Ethan maintained their routines, and gave me precious moments of rest between feedings. When they left, I felt prepared to handle things on my own. Amanda has increased her visits, coming twice a month now. She offered to take Zoe and Ethan for a full week during the summer to give me a break with just the baby. Zoe is excited about this plan, especially since Amanda recently moved to an apartment complex with a pool. As for me, I'm adjusting to life with 3 children. The night feedings are exhausting, but watching Zoe read to her brothers while they listen with rapt attention makes the fatigue worthwhile. Ethan has appointed himself mommy's helper and solemnly brings me diapers, whether needed or not. The situation with my mother and sister remains unresolved, but I've found peace in focusing on the family we've built here in this house. The path to motherhood wasn't what I expected, but looking at my 3 children, I wouldn't change a thing. Update 3, it's been 6 months since my last update, and Alex is now a chunky, cheerful 9-month-old who recently started crawling and getting into everything. Life with 3 kids keeps me busy, but we've fallen into rhythms that work for our household. The biggest news is that Megan and I have cautiously begun rebuilding our relationship. 3 months ago, she sent a text asking if we could meet for coffee, just the 2 of us. I arranged for Amanda to watch the kids. She's become my most reliable support person, and met Megan at a cafe halfway between our homes. The first 10 minutes were awkward, with conversation limited to the weather and her new haircut. Then she pulled out her phone and showed me a picture of a 5-year-old boy named Marcus. Her first foster placement. Megan's face transformed as she talked about Marcus. She described his love of dinosaurs, his struggle with reading, and his nightly routine of checking under the bed for monsters. She spoke about the challenges too, his nightmares, his initial distrust, the meetings with social workers and biological family. Then she said something that showed how much she'd grown. I didn't understand before. I thought fostering would be about filling a void in my life. But it's not about me at all. It's about giving Marcus what he needs until his mom can provide it herself. I nodded, recognizing the journey she'd taken to reach this understanding. She continued, explaining that Marcus's mother was working hard on her sobriety and job stability, with the goal of reunification within the year. Megan's voice cracked as she admitted she would miss Marcus terribly when he went home, but she believed supporting that reunification was the right thing to do. Then came her apology. She said she had been wrong to suggest I had stolen children from more deserving parents or that my fostering journey somehow diminished her pain. She acknowledged that her infertility had consumed her to the point where she couldn't see beyond her own grief. Fostering Marcus had opened her eyes to the reality that children in the system aren't there to solve adult problems. They're there because they need safe temporary homes while their families heal. I accepted her apology and offered my own for the harshness of my words during our argument. We spent the next hour sharing experiences, the challenges of middle-of-the-night uncertainties, the joy of reaching a child who's built walls, the complex emotions of supporting connections with biological family. For the first time in years, we connected as sisters rather than adversaries. Before we parted, Megan asked if she could meet Alex and reconnect with Zoe and Ethan. We arranged a park playdate for the following weekend, including Marcus. The kids took to each other immediately. Ethan was fascinated by Marcus's dinosaur knowledge, while Zoe appointed herself guide to both younger boys. Megan held Alex, marveling at how much he'd grown since the single photo she'd seen of him as a newborn. Since then, we've had monthly family gatherings. The relationship is still healing, there are moments of tension when old hurts resurface, but we're moving forward. My relationship with my mother has been more complicated to repair. After her unannounced visit, I sent her a letter outlining clear boundaries, no surprise visits, no undermining my parenting decisions, no disparaging comments about our family structure. I made it clear that respecting these boundaries was non-negotiable if she wanted to be part of our lives. 2 months passed without response. Then a card arrived in the mail containing a brief note. I miss my grandchildren. I'm ready to listen. We started with short, supervised visits. She was stiff at first, clearly measuring her words, but gradually relaxed as she saw I wasn't looking to punish her, just to establish healthy boundaries. Last month, my mother attended Zoe's school play. Afterwards, she hugged Zoe and told her how proud she was. Later that evening, she pulled me aside and admitted she had been wrong to choose sides between her daughters. She said seeing how well all 3 children were thriving under my care had made her realize what truly mattered. Our relationship remains a work in progress, but it's improving. Amanda continues to be a steady presence in our lives. She recently started dating someone new, and last month she brought him to dinner at our house. Watching her introduce him to Zoe and Ethan was a powerful moment. She was confident in her role as their mother, even while acknowledging my place in their lives. This journey has taught me that family isn't about competition but collaboration. Zoe turned 16 last week. As we prepared for her birthday dinner, she asked if we could talk privately. She said that after much thought, she wanted to make our family connection official through adoption. We discussed this possibility over the years, always with the understanding that it would be her choice, when and if she was ready. Hearing her say she was ready brought tears to my eyes. We're starting the legal process next month. Ethan, now 4, continues to adore his big sister and has appointed himself Alex's personal entertainer. Alex laughs more for Ethan than for anyone else. Megan and Tom are preparing to welcome their second foster placement, a newborn whose mother needs time to complete a treatment program. Megan called me for advice about setting up a nursery, and we spent hours talking through the practical and emotional aspects of fostering an infant. Marcus continues to thrive in their care, with reunification now planned for next spring. This journey has been full of unexpected turns. When I signed up to be a mentor 7 years ago, I never imagined it would lead to motherhood 3 times over, a family rift that seemed irreparable, and ultimately, a deeper understanding of what family truly means. The path hasn't been easy, but watching my children grow surrounded by people who love them, biological and chosen family alike, makes every challenge worthwhile. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. My parents accused me of ruining my sister's marriage after I gave her advice. Months later, a shocking secret changes everything. I, 34F, have been struggling with a family situation that's been causing me sleepless nights for months now. It all centers around my younger sister, Ella, 29F, her estranged husband Richard, 31M, and their 2 kids, Jill, 7F, and Jack, 4M. To give you some context, Ella and Richard met in college. They were the classic opposites attract couple. Ella was always the responsible, organized one, while Richard was more laid back and spontaneous. They balanced each other out well, and for a while, everything seemed perfect. They got married right after graduation, and within a year, Jill came along. I remember how excited Richard was when Jill was born. He'd spend hours just watching her sleep, talking about all the things he was going to teach her. When Jack was born 3 years later, Richard was over the moon. He'd always wanted a son, and he couldn't wait to take Jack fishing and camping. But somewhere along the line, things started to change. Richard got a new job that required more travel, and he seemed to be away more often than not. Ella was left juggling 2 young kids and a full-time job of her own. The strain started to show in their relationship. About a year ago, Ella called me in tears. She'd found messages on Richard's phone that suggested he might be having an affair. When she confronted him, he denied it at first, but eventually admitted to an emotional connection with a coworker. He swore nothing physical had happened, but the trust was broken. They tried counseling for a few months, but it didn't seem to help. Richard was defensive and uncooperative, according to Ella. Finally, about 8 months ago, they decided to separate. They agreed that Richard would have the kids every other weekend, and they'd reassess the situation after 6 months. At first, things seemed to be going okay. Richard would pick up the kids on Friday evening and drop them off on Sunday night. But gradually, he started making excuses. One weekend, he had to work late. The next, he wasn't feeling well. It got to the point where he was only taking the kids maybe once a month, if that. I have 3 kids of my own, twins Emma and Olivia, 8F, and Noah, 9M. They get along great with their cousins, so I started offering to take Jill and Jack when Richard would cancel. I figured it was better for them to have fun with their cousins than to be disappointed by their dad. The thing is, Richard started taking advantage of this. He'd call me directly to ask if I could take the kids on his weekend, saying things like, "They always have more fun at your place anyway." It frustrated me to no end, but I didn't want to say no to the kids. I tried talking to Richard about it several times. I told him he needed to step up and be there for his kids. He'd always have excuses. He was too busy with work, or he wasn't feeling well, or he had plans he couldn't cancel. It felt like he was treating his time with his kids as optional. This situation brought back a lot of painful memories for me. My ex-husband, Brian, wasn't much better when we first separated. He'd cancel at the last minute, leaving me scrambling to find childcare. It took me a long time to realize that his behavior wasn't just hurting me, it was hurting our kids too. Things came to a head last month. It was Richard's weekend, but he called me on Friday afternoon asking if I could take the kids. His excuse this time? He had tickets to a concert he'd forgotten about. I was furious but agreed to take the kids. When Ella came to pick them up on Sunday, she looked exhausted. She confided in me that she was struggling with Richard's unreliability. She never knew if he'd actually take the kids, which made it hard for her to plan anything on her weekends off. I sympathized with her, thinking about my own experience with Brian. I told her how I'd eventually changed our custody arrangement so that Brian only got the kids when he specifically asked for them, and I agreed. I explained how much easier it was not having to depend on him sticking to a schedule, and how my kids were happier not being constantly let down. Ella seemed to really take this to heart. She thanked me for listening and left with the kids. I thought that was the end of it, but apparently, she talked to Richard about changing their arrangement. The next day, Richard called me, absolutely livid. He accused me of trying to turn Ella against him and take his kids away. I was shocked. I hadn't told Ella to do anything. I just shared my own experience. I tried to explain this to Richard, but he wouldn't listen. He kept yelling about how I was a terrible sister and how I should mind my own business. Finally, I'd had enough and snapped back at him. I told him if he wasn't such an unreliable father, Ella wouldn't be considering changing things. Now my family's divided. My parents are siding with Richard, saying I shouldn't have interfered. They've always had a soft spot for Richard, ever since he helped Dad renovate their kitchen a few years ago. My brother thinks I did the right thing. He's never been Richard's biggest fan, especially after Richard forgot his birthday 2 years in a row. Ella's thanked me for opening her eyes, but now she's getting pressure from our parents to leave things as they are. They keep saying that Richard's just going through a rough patch and needs support, not criticism. I'm starting to wonder if I overstepped. Should I have kept my mouth shut about my own experience? Am I the asshole for indirectly causing this family drama? I can't help but think about Jill and Jack in all of this. Jill's old enough to understand that her dad keeps canceling on them, and I've seen how disappointed she gets. Jack's still too young to really grasp what's going on, but he's started asking why they don't see their dad as much anymore. Part of me feels like I need to step back and let Ella and Richard figure this out on their own. But another part of me wants to fight for those kids, to make sure they don't grow up feeling like their dad doesn't want to spend time with them. I keep thinking about my own kids, and how much happier they've been since I changed things with Brian. They know when they're going to see him now, and he rarely cancels because he has to commit to the time in advance. It's made such a difference in their lives. But maybe every situation is different. Maybe Richard really is just going through a rough patch and will get better. Maybe I'm projecting my own experiences onto Ella's situation. I just don't know what to do now. Should I apologize to Richard and my parents? Should I stand my ground? Should I stay out of it entirely from now on? I feel like no matter what I do, someone's going to be upset with me. Update 1. It's been about a month since my last post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. It really helped me see that I wasn't in the wrong for sharing my experience with Ella. After the initial blow-up, things were tense in our family for a while. Our parents kept trying to pressure Ella into leaving the custody arrangement as it was, saying Richard just needed more time to adjust to being a single dad. Ella was torn. She didn't want to rock the boat, but she was also tired of Richard's unreliability. During this time, I tried to stay out of it as much as possible. I still had Jill and Jack over to play with my kids, but I made sure to arrange it with Ella, not Richard. I didn't want to give him any more ammunition to use against me. One weekend, when the kids were over, Jill asked me why her daddy didn't want to spend time with them anymore. It broke my heart. I tried to explain that her daddy loved her very much, but sometimes grown-ups have a hard time showing it. I'm not sure she understood, but she seemed a little less sad after our talk. Things came to a head about 2 weeks ago. It was supposed to be Richard's weekend with the kids. Ella dropped them off on Friday evening, only to get a call from Richard at 9 p.m. He said he had to go out of town for work and asked if she could come get the kids. Ella was furious. She'd already made plans for her child-free weekend. That's when Ella called me. She was in tears, asking if I could take the kids for the night. Of course, I agreed. When she dropped them off, Jill was crying, asking why her daddy didn't want to spend time with them. Jack was confused and cranky, not understanding why they were being shuffled around so late at night. The next day, Ella came over early. She was determined to confront Richard and change their arrangement. She asked if I'd watch the kids while she went to talk to him, which I agreed to do. While Ella was gone, I tried to keep the kids distracted. We baked cookies, played board games, and even started a pillow fort in the living room. But I could tell they were worried. Jill kept asking when her mom was coming back, and Jack was more clingy than usual. Ella was gone for hours. When she came back, she looked drained but relieved. She told me that she and Richard had a long, difficult conversation. Richard initially tried to defend himself, saying work was just really busy right now. But Ella stood her ground. She told Richard that from now on, he wouldn't have set weekends with the kids. Instead, he'd have to ask her at least a week in advance if he wanted to take them for a weekend. If he canceled last minute, he'd lose his next chance to have them. Richard wasn't happy about this, but Ella didn't back down. She told him that his behavior was hurting the kids, and this was his last chance to prove he could be reliable. Our parents weren't thrilled when they found out. They came over to my house that evening, saying I'd poisoned Ella against Richard. I stood my ground, telling them that Richard's behavior was the problem, not my advice to Ella. It turned into a huge argument. Our dad kept saying Richard was doing his best, and our mom accused me of being jealous because Richard was a better father than my ex. That really hurt. My ex might not have been perfect, but at least he showed up when he said he would. I reminded them of all the times Richard had canceled on the kids, how disappointed Jill and Jack always were. I asked them if they really thought it was okay for Richard to treat his children like they were optional. That seemed to give them pause, but they still insisted that we needed to give Richard more time. The argument ended with our parents storming out, saying they needed time to think. They haven't spoken to me since, which has been hard. We've always been a close-knit family, and this rift is painful for all of us. But Ella has been incredibly supportive. She told me that our conversation had given her the courage to stand up for herself and her kids. She said she'd been so worried about keeping the peace that she lost sight of what was best for Jill and Jack. For now, we're in a sort of uneasy peace. Richard's agreed to the new arrangement, though he's not happy about it. Ella's feeling more in control. The kids seem a bit confused by the change, but they're adjusting. Jill asked me the other day why things were different now. I tried to explain that her mom and dad were trying to figure out the best way to make sure she and Jack got to spend time with both of them. She seemed to accept that, but I could tell she was still a little unsure. I'm still not sure if this will solve everything, but it feels like a step in the right direction. Ella seems more relaxed, knowing she won't have to deal with last-minute cancellations anymore. And I'm hopeful that this will motivate Richard to be more present when he does have the kids. As for me, I'm trying to focus on being there for Ella and the kids. I've told Ella that my door is always open if she needs to talk or if she needs help with Jill and Jack. I'm also trying to give our parents some space, hoping they'll come around eventually. It's a difficult situation, and I know it's going to take time for everyone to adjust. But I believe that in the long run, this will be better for Jill and Jack. They deserve parents they can count on, and I hope this new arrangement will help provide that. Update 2. It's been another month, and things have taken an unexpected turn. The new arrangement with Richard seemed to be working at first. He was actually asking to see the kids in advance and showing up when he said he would. Ella was cautiously optimistic. But about 2 weeks ago, Ella called me in tears. She just found out that Richard had lost his job 3 months ago and hadn't told anyone. Apparently, all those times he said he was busy with work or had to go out of town for business, he was actually going to job interviews or working odd jobs to make ends meet. This news hit Ella hard. She and Richard had always been open about their finances when they were together. They'd made all their big decisions as a team. The fact that Richard had kept this secret for so long really shook her trust in him. Ella was conflicted. On one hand, she was angry that Richard had lied to her and the kids. On the other hand, she felt guilty for being so hard on him when he was struggling. She asked me what I thought she should do. I advised her to talk to Richard calmly and get the full story before making any decisions. Ella agreed and arranged to meet with Richard the next day. Their conversation revealed a lot. Richard admitted that he'd been too ashamed to tell anyone he'd lost his job. He'd been trying to find a new one before anyone found out, but it was taking longer than he expected. He said he'd been canceling on the kids because he couldn't afford to take them out or buy them food when they were with him. This revelation put a lot of things into perspective. Richard's behavior, while still not excusable, at least had some explanation now. It made me think about how pride and shame can sometimes drive people to make poor decisions. Ella was upset that Richard hadn't been honest with her, but she also understood why he'd kept it secret. They talked for hours, trying to figure out a way forward. In the end, they came to a new agreement. Richard would still have to ask in advance to have the kids, but Ella would be more flexible with the schedule. She also agreed to help out financially when the kids were with Richard, at least until he found a new job. When Ella told me about this, I was surprised but proud of her for being so understanding. However, I also warned her to be cautious. I suggested she ask for proof of Richard's job search efforts to ensure he wasn't taking advantage of her kindness. Our parents, when they found out, had a complete change of heart. They went from criticizing Ella for being too harsh on Richard to criticizing her for being too lenient. They insisted that Richard was just making excuses and that Ella shouldn't trust him. This led to another family argument. Our parents accused me of manipulating Ella again, saying I should have encouraged her to be stricter with Richard. I stood my ground, telling them that Ella was an adult capable of making her own decisions. The argument ended with our parents declaring that they were washing their hands of the whole situation. They said they wouldn't be offering any more advice or help unless we came to our senses. This whole situation has made me reflect on how quickly we sometimes judge others without knowing the full story. While I still think Richard should have been honest from the beginning, I can understand how difficult it must have been for him to admit he'd lost his job. For now, Ella and Richard are trying to make their new arrangement work. The kids seem happier now that they're seeing their dad more regularly. Richard's been more engaged when he has them, probably because he's not constantly worried about them finding out his secret. I'm still here, supporting Ella as best I can. I've offered to help out with the kids whenever needed, and I'm keeping a close eye on the situation to make sure Richard doesn't take advantage. It's a complicated situation, and I'm not sure how it will all turn out. But I'm hopeful that this honesty and cooperation between Ella and Richard will lead to a better situation for everyone, especially the kids. Update 3, it's been 2 months since my last update, and I'm still trying to process everything that's happened. Things have taken a turn that none of us expected. About 3 weeks ago, Richard called Ella in a panic. He'd finally landed a job interview for a great position, but it was scheduled for the weekend he was supposed to have the kids. He begged Ella to switch weekends with him. Ella, wanting to support Richard's job search, agreed. The day of the interview, I offered to watch Jill and Jack so Ella could have a break. Everything was going fine until about 3 p.m. when I got a frantic call from Ella. She'd just received a call from the police. Richard had been in a car accident on his way to the interview. We rushed to the hospital, not knowing what to expect. When we arrived, we were relieved to find out that Richard's injuries weren't life-threatening, but he did have a broken leg and some cuts and bruises. Here's where things get complicated. While Richard was being treated, the police officer who responded to the accident came to talk to us. He revealed that they'd found open alcohol containers in Richard's car, and his blood alcohol level was well over the legal limit. Ella was devastated. All the progress Richard seemed to be making, all the trust she'd put in him, came crashing down in that moment. She broke down right there in the hospital waiting room. I did my best to comfort her, but I was angry too. Richard had not only put himself in danger but could have hurt or killed someone else. And he'd thrown away a chance at a good job that could have helped him be a better provider for his kids. When Richard was released from the hospital a few days later, Ella confronted him. He broke down and admitted that he'd been struggling with alcohol for years, even before they separated. He said he'd been using it to cope with the stress of unemployment and the shame of not being able to provide for his family. This revelation brought back memories of our uncle, who had battled alcoholism for years. I remembered how it had torn our extended family apart, and how long it had taken for everyone to heal. I couldn't help but wonder if we were about to go through the same thing with Richard. Ella was torn. On one hand, she was furious with Richard for putting everyone at risk. On the other hand, she could see he was struggling and needed help. After a lot of discussion, and some heated arguments, they came to a decision. Richard agreed to enter a rehab program. While he's in treatment, he won't be allowed to see the kids unsupervised. Ella's arranged for him to have video calls with Jill and Jack twice a week, and she's promised to keep him updated on their lives. Explaining this to the kids was hard. Jill, being older, had a lot of questions that were difficult to answer. Jack, thankfully, was too young to fully understand what was happening. Ella decided to tell them that their dad was sick and needed to go to a special hospital to get better. Our parents, when they found out, were shocked. They apologized to Ella, and to me, for not seeing the signs earlier. They've offered to help out more with the kids and to support Richard in his recovery journey. It's been a relief to have them back on our side, even though it took such a dramatic event to bring us all together again. As for me, I'm still processing everything. I'm angry at Richard for putting so many people at risk, but I'm also hoping he gets the help he needs. Mostly, I'm focused on being there for Ella and the kids as they navigate this difficult time. Ella's been incredibly strong through all of this. She's explained the situation to the kids in an age-appropriate way, emphasizing that their dad is sick and is getting help to get better. She's also started attending Al-Anon meetings to get support for herself. I've been trying to keep things as normal as possible for Jill and Jack when they're with me. We still have our movie nights and baking sessions, but I can tell they're confused and upset. Jill's been having nightmares, and Jack's become more clingy than usual. It's been a roller coaster of emotions, and I know we have a long road ahead. But I'm cautiously hopeful that this could be a turning point for Richard, and for his relationship with his kids. Only time will tell. For now, we're taking it one day at a time. Ella's focusing on the kids and on healing herself. Richard's in rehab, working on his sobriety. And I'm doing my best to be the supportive sister and aunt that my family needs right now. I've learned a lot through this whole experience. About the importance of communication, about not jumping to conclusions, and about how complex family dynamics can be. It's been challenging, But I hope that in the end, we'll all come out stronger for it.